Every mo my wife sent money to her brother. Until the day I went to meet him when I arrived there. Look, I'm not going to sit here and pretend I was some kind of genius back in 2010. I was 27, working a dead-end job at a graphic design firm that paid me just enough to afford ramen with the occasional egg cracked into it. And my idea of a successful weekend was binge-watching whatever was on Netflix without falling asleep by episode 2. So when I tell you that I fell for Laura like a sack of bricks dropped from a skyscraper, you gotta understand, I wasn't exactly operating with all cylinders firing. The first time I saw her was at my buddy Kevin's housewarming party, which was less housewarming and more, look at this shoebox apartment I'm overpaying for in Lincoln Park. Kevin had invited basically everyone he'd ever made eye contact with, so the place was packed tighter than a rush hour red line train. I was standing in the kitchen, nursing a lukewarm beer and trying to look like I was having a good time when she walked in. And man, when I say this woman had a vibe, I mean she had a vibe. She looked like she'd just stepped out of some old movie where the librarian takes off her glasses and suddenly everyone realizes she's gorgeous. Soft brown hair pulled back in this effortless way, big brown eyes that looked like they could see straight through your soul and probably your bank account too. And this smile. God, that smile. That made you feel like you were the only person in the room worth talking to. She was wearing this cream-colored cardigan over a floral dress, looking completely out of place among Kevin's friends who were all trying way too hard to look cool in their vintage band tees and deliberately ripped jeans. I'm talking angel in a mosh pit level of contrast here. Naturally, my dumbass decided this was the perfect moment to introduce myself, despite the fact that I had nacho cheese dust on my shirt and probably smelled like the discount body spray I bought at Walgreens. Hey, I said, with all the smooth confidence of a middle schooler asking someone to slow dance. I'm Jason. She turned those eyes on me and smiled. Laura, nice to meet you. Her voice was soft, almost musical, like she was perpetually worried about disturbing someone in a library. We got to talking, and I found out she worked as a nurse at Northwestern Memorial Hospital. A nurse? I mean, come on. Is there anything more wholesome and trustworthy than a nurse? These are people who dedicate their lives to helping others, who work insane hours dealing with bodily fluids and entitled patients, who probably rescue puppies in their spare time. At least, that's what my naive brain thought. Turns out, slapping on a pair of scrubs doesn't automatically make you Mother Teresa, but we'll get to that disaster later. We talked for hours that night. She told me about growing up in a small town in Wisconsin, about how she'd always wanted to help people, about her love for cheesy romantic comedies, and her inexplicable hatred for cilantro. I told her about my dreams of starting my own design company someday, about my collection of vintage concert posters, about the time I accidentally adopted a stray cat that turned out to be my neighbor's very expensive Persian. We laughed, we connected, and by the end of the night, I had her number saved in my phone with way too many heart emojis next to her name. 6 months later, we were married. Yeah, you read that right. 6 months. I can already hear you judging me through these words. And you know what? Fair. You're absolutely right to judge. My mom sure as hell did. When I told her Laura and I were getting married, she looked at me like I'd just announced I was joining a circus as a human cannonball. Jason Michael Patterson, she said, using my full government name like I was 12 years old again. You barely know this girl. What's the rush? Is she pregnant? No, Mom, she's not pregnant, I said, rolling my eyes hard enough to see my own brain. We're in love. When you know, you know. What you know, she shot back, is that this girl showed up 6 months ago, and now you're ready to legally bind yourself to her for life. That's not love, honey. That's either a head injury or stupidity. Spoiler alert, it was stupidity. Grade A, certified, should be studied by scientists level of stupidity. But at the time, I thought I had it all figured out. I was in love, sure, but I was also broke as hell and not thinking with anything resembling logic or common sense. Laura made me feel like I was worth something, like I wasn't just another guy drowning in student loan debt and wondering if I'd ever be able to afford a place without a roommate who left dirty dishes in the sink for weeks. She made me feel seen, valued, important. Looking back, that should have been my first red flag. When someone makes you feel too good, they're probably selling something. We had a small wedding at the courthouse because neither of us could afford anything fancy, followed by a reception at a Mexican restaurant where the most expensive thing on the menu was $17. My best man Marcus gave a toast that was mostly him roasting me for moving too fast, but everyone laughed, and I didn't care because I was happy. Laura looked beautiful in a simple white dress she'd found at some boutique, and when she said, "I do," I genuinely believed we were starting our forever. The first year was actually pretty great, I'm not gonna lie. We moved into a one-bedroom apartment in Wicker Park that had character, which is real estate speak for the radiator sounds like it's summoning demons, and there's probably asbestos in the walls. Laura worked her nursing shifts, I worked my design gigs, and we did the whole domestic bliss thing. We cooked dinners together, binge-watched Breaking Bad, argued about whether we should get a dog or a cat, had the kind of sex that makes you forget you have neighbors with thin walls. It was normal. It was good. It was exactly what I thought marriage was supposed to be. And then, about 13 months in, she brought up the brother. We were sitting on our thrift store couch, eating takeout Chinese from those little white boxes, when she got all serious. The kind of serious where you know something heavy is coming, like when your boss says, "We need to talk," or when your doctor calls you back personally instead of having the nurse do it. "Jason," she said, setting down her lo mein, "I need to tell you something about my family." I muted the TV. "Okay, shoot. I have a brother. His name is Adam. He's my only sibling, and he's not doing well." "Oh man, I'm sorry," I said, because what else do you say? "What's going on with him?" "He's sick. Really sick. It's this rare condition that makes it impossible for him to work. He can barely take care of himself most days." My heart went out to this guy I'd never met. "That's awful. What kind of condition?" She waved her hand vaguely, like she was trying to swat away the question. "It's complicated. The doctors don't fully understand it themselves. But the point is, he needs help. Financial help. He's all alone out there, and I'm all he has." "Of course," I said immediately, because I'm a good person, damn it. Or at least I try to be. "Whatever he needs, we'll figure it out." She smiled, but there was something in her eyes I couldn't quite read. Relief? Gratitude? Or maybe it was calculation, but I was too busy being the supportive husband to notice. "Thank you, baby. I knew you'd understand. I've been sending him money every month to help with his expenses." "How much are we talking?" I asked, thinking maybe $100 here and there. "About 800. I nearly choked on my Kung Pao chicken. $800? Every month. He needs it for rent and medical supplies and food. I know it's a lot, but Jason, he's family. He's my brother. What else can I do?" And there it was. The magic word. Family. The word that makes people do absolutely insane things, like drain their bank accounts or hide bodies, or apparently marry someone after 6 months. I looked at Laura, at her big brown eyes filling with tears, at the way she was twisting her napkin in her hands like she was afraid I'd say no, and I felt like the biggest jerk in the world for even hesitating. "Okay," I said. "We'll make it work." She threw her arms around me, thanking me over and over, telling me I was the best husband in the world. And me? I sat there like a proud, supportive idiot, nodding along like one of those bobbleheads you see in the back window of someone's car. The kind that just keeps bouncing no matter how bumpy the road gets, completely oblivious to the fact that the whole vehicle is about to drive straight off a cliff. Yeah, that was me, the bobblehead husband, nodding his way into the stupidest financial decision of his life, all because a pretty woman with nurse credentials told him a sob story about her sick brother. And the worst part? I actually felt good about it. I felt like I was doing the right thing, like I was being noble and selfless and all those other adjectives that desperate people use to justify their terrible choices. If only I'd known then what I know now. If only I'd asked more questions, demanded to meet this mysterious Adam, or hell, just Googled signs your wife is running a scam. But I didn't. I just kept nodding, kept sending money, kept playing the role of the good guy while Laura played me like a fiddle in the world's saddest orchestra. Now look, I want to make something crystal clear before we go any further. I'm not a heartless bastard. I genuinely believed in helping family. My own parents had bailed me out of more than a few jams over the years. Like that time I totaled my Honda Civic trying to avoid a squirrel and ended up hitting a mailbox instead, or when I was between jobs for 3 months and couldn't make rent without subsisting entirely on peanut butter sandwiches. Family helps family. That's the rule. That's what separates us from the animals, right? Well, that and opposable thumbs and the ability to feel shame when we do something monumentally stupid. But here's the thing about Laura's whole helping my sick brother's situation. Something always felt off. Like when you're watching a movie and you can tell there's going to be a plot twist, but you can't quite figure out what it is yet. That nagging feeling in your gut that something doesn't add up, but you ignore it because you're too invested in the story to walk out of the theater. That was me for 2 solid years, sitting in the front row of my own life, munching popcorn while red flags waved all around me like I was at a communist parade. The first weird thing was how vague Laura got whenever I asked about Adam's actual medical condition. And I don't mean vague like, oh, it's too complicated to explain. I mean vague like a politician dodging questions about their offshore bank accounts. I'd ask her straight up, so what exactly does Adam have? Is it neurological? Autoimmune? Did he get bitten by a radioactive spider and now he's got weird symptoms? She'd do this thing where she'd pause mid whatever she was doing, folding laundry, chopping vegetables, pretending to care about my day, and give me this look. The kind of look that said I'd just asked something deeply inappropriate, like I'd requested details about her gynecologist appointment or something. It's complicated, Jason, she'd say, her voice dropping to that nurse-serious tone she used when she wanted to sound authoritative. Complicated like medical complicated, or complicated like IRS audit complicated? I'd joke, trying to lighten the mood because humor is my default setting when things get uncomfortable. She never laughed. Not once. She'd just turn back to whatever she was doing and change the subject faster than a teenager caught watching something they shouldn't be. Did you remember to pick up milk? Or, your mom called earlier. Or, I think the toilet's running again. Master class in deflection, this woman. She could have taught seminars. As the months rolled by, the money Laura sent to Adam kept increasing like some kind of horrifying exponential graph you'd see in an economics textbook. First it was $800, then it jumped to $1,000, then $1,200 because apparently Adam needed special medical equipment, then $1,500 because his medication costs went up. Pretty soon we were hemorrhaging money like a hedge fund manager after a bad day on Wall Street. Except we didn't have hedge fund money to begin with. We had, hoping our debit card doesn't get declined at Trader Joe's money. Our grocery shopping became an exercise in creative poverty. We were living like broke college students despite both of us having actual jobs. The contents of our fridge looked like a sad still life painting. Ramen noodles, the cheapest cereal that came in bags instead of boxes, eggs when they were on sale, and a whole lot of air where actual food should have been. Meanwhile, I'm supposed to believe that Adam, this ghost of a man I'd never met, needed more money every month than we spent on ourselves combined. I started doing the math in my head, which was dangerous because math has a way of making you realize how screwed you actually are. Over the course of a year, we were sending this dude close to 15 grand. $15,000. That's a decent used car. That's a semester of college tuition. That's a vacation to Europe with enough left over for a shopping spree. Instead, it was going to fund the mysterious medical needs of a man who existed only in Laura's stories and my bank statements. Hey babe, I said one night while we were eating spaghetti without any meat sauce because ground beef was apparently a luxury item now. I was thinking maybe we should visit Adam. You know, show some support. I'd like to meet my brother-in-law. Laura literally froze mid-bite, her fork suspended in the air like someone had hit pause on the remote control of her life. Her eyes went wide, and for just a second, just a flash, I saw something that looked an awful lot like panic. Oh, no, that's not a good idea, she said quickly, setting down her fork with a clatter. Why not? He's family. You're always saying how alone he is. I bet he'd appreciate a visit. He's very private, Jason. He doesn't like visitors. It makes him anxious. I raised an eyebrow. What's he got? Contagious shyness. Stage for introversion. This isn't funny, she snapped, which was rich coming from someone who was apparently running some kind of long-distance charity for a hermit. He has anxiety about people seeing him in his condition. It would just make things worse. Okay, fine, I said, backing off because I didn't want to fight about her weird reclusive brother. But maybe we could at least video chat with him? You know, FaceTime or Skype or whatever the kids are using these days. His vision is bad. Screens hurt his eyes. Of course they do. How convenient. But here's the kicker, the thing that should have sent me running to the nearest divorce attorney with my hair on fire. Laura always sent cash. Not checks. Not bank transfers. Not Venmo or PayPal. or any of the approximately 7,000 digital payment methods that had been invented specifically to avoid having to mail physical money like we were living in the Old West. No, she insisted on withdrawing crisp bills from our account and mailing them in envelopes like some kind of drug dealer making a drop. Why can't we just transfer the money to his account? I asked more than once. It's faster, safer, and we'd have a record of it. He doesn't trust banks, Laura said. Like this was the most reasonable explanation in the world. He's had bad experiences with them. Right. Because that's exactly how modern healthcare works. Hospitals and pharmacies and medical supply companies are definitely cool with you showing up with cash like you're buying a used car from some guy you met on Craigslist. Medicare? Never heard of her. Insurance? What's that? Just bring us a briefcase full of unmarked bills and we'll hook you up with whatever treatment you need. My buddy Marcus was the first person to say out loud what I was thinking, but too chicken to admit. We were at our usual dive bar, the kind of place where the floor sticks to your shoes and the bartender knows your order before you sit down. I was nursing a beer and complaining about our financial situation, again, and Marcus just looked at me with this expression that was half pity, half, "Are you really this dense?" "Bro," he said, leaning back on his stool. "She's either hiding a gold mine or funding a cult. Maybe both. You ever seen this brother?" "No, but..." "You ever talked to him on the phone?" "Well, no, but his anxiety." "You ever seen a medical bill? A prescription bottle? Literally any proof this dude exists?" I opened my mouth to defend Laura, but nothing came out. Because Marcus was right. I had zero evidence that Adam was real. For all I knew, Laura was funding an entirely different life, or maybe she had a gambling problem and Adam was code for her bookie. Or maybe she was running some kind of elaborate art heist and needed money to pay off her crew. The possibilities were endless, and all of them were better than the truth I'd eventually discover. "It's not like that," I finally said, but even I didn't believe myself. "She's a nurse. She helps people. That's what she does." Marcus gave me a look that could only be described as profound disappointment mixed with secondhand embarrassment. "Man, nurses can be con artists too. Scrubs don't come with a halo. You gotta wake up." I laughed it off, made some joke about Marcus watching too many true crime documentaries, and changed the subject to sports or work or literally anything else. But his words stuck with me like gum on a shoe. They rattled around in my brain during my commute, during boring meetings at work, during those moments right before you fall asleep when your mind decides to replay every embarrassing thing you've ever done. The truth was starting to creep in around the edges of my denial, like water seeping under a door during a flood. Something was wrong. Something had been wrong for a while, and I'd been too scared, too proud, or too stupid to acknowledge it. I'd been so busy playing the role of the supportive husband, the good guy who helps his wife's sick brother, that I'd completely missed the fact that I might be the star of a con job. But I still wasn't ready to face it head on. Not yet. I needed proof. I needed something concrete, something I could point to and say, see. I'm not crazy for thinking this whole situation is fishier than a seafood market in July. I couldn't just accuse my wife of lying without evidence. That's not how marriages work. Or at least, that's not how I thought they worked back when I still believed my marriage was real. So I did what any reasonable person would do. I started paying closer attention. I watched where Laura kept her things, noticed when she made her monthly cash withdrawals, observed the routine she'd established around this whole Adam situation. I wasn't ready to confront her yet, but I was definitely ready to stop being a bobblehead and start being a detective. Turns out, Marcus wasn't far off at all. In fact, he wasn't far off enough. The truth was somehow even worse than funding a cult, and I was about to stumble face first into it like a drunk person tripping over their own feet. But that discovery was still a few weeks away. For now, I was just a suspicious husband, sleeping next to a woman who might be lying to me, sending my hard-earned money to a person who might not even exist, and trying to convince myself that everything was fine. Spoiler alert, everything was definitely not fine. You know that moment when you accidentally discover something you weren't supposed to find, and your brain immediately splits into two warring factions? One side is screaming, "Put it back, put it back, put it back," while the other side is going, "But wait, we need to know the truth." Yeah, that's exactly where I found myself on a completely ordinary Tuesday evening while doing the most mundane task known to humanity, laundry. Let me set the scene for you. It was about 7:30 at night. I'd just gotten home from work where I'd spent 8 soul-crushing hours designing a logo for a client who kept saying they wanted something that pops, but also whispers, which is apparently what passes for creative direction in the business world. Laura was working a night shift at the hospital, or at least that's what she'd told me before kissing me goodbye that morning. I'd ordered pizza because cooking for one person feels depressing, and also because I'm a grown man who still gets excited about pepperoni. I was standing in our bedroom, sorting through the dirty clothes hamper, trying to figure out if that shirt had been worn once or twice, because there's a big difference between I can get another day out of this, and this is a biohazard. I grabbed Laura's jacket, this cute denim thing she wore constantly, and started checking the pockets before throwing it in the wash, because I'd learned the hard way that washing a tube of chapstick creates a waxy nightmare that ruins an entire load. My hand hit something in the inside pocket. An envelope. Not sealed, just tucked in there like she'd forgotten about it, or maybe hidden it there on purpose. Now, I'm not proud of what happened next, but I'm also not going to lie and pretend I'm some kind of saint with ironclad moral principles. My curiosity didn't just get the better of me. It grabbed me by the throat and refused to let go until I looked inside that envelope. Besides, it wasn't even sealed. That's basically an invitation, right? That's what I told myself anyway, because humans are excellent at justifying literally anything when they want to. I pulled out the envelope and opened it. Inside was a birthday card, and not just any birthday card. This thing looked like it had been made by someone who watched way too many crafting tutorials on YouTube. It was covered in colorful paper, had little cutout hearts glued all over it with what appeared to be an entire bottle of glitter, and featured handwriting that was definitely feminine, but wasn't Laura's. The front said, "Happy Birthday," in letters decorated with tiny flowers. My heart was already starting to beat faster, doing that thing where it feels like it's trying to escape your chest through sheer force of will. I opened the card, and that's when my entire world tilted sideways like a carnival ride operated by someone who failed their safety certification. The message inside read, "Happy birthday, my love. Can't wait to celebrate you tonight. Counting down the hours until I'm in your arms again. You make every day brighter. Yours forever, A." As in Adam. As in the supposedly sick, supposedly reclusive, supposedly anxious brother who couldn't handle visitors or phone calls, or apparently anything except romantic birthday cards with enough glitter to be visible from space. I stood there in our bedroom, holding this card, feeling my brain try to process what I was seeing. It was like watching a computer crash in real time, that spinning wheel of death while everything freezes and you're not sure if you should restart the whole system or just throw it out the window. Unless her brother had some seriously concerning boundary issues, this was not the kind of message you send to a sibling. This was the kind of message you send to someone you're sleeping with, someone you're in love with, someone who is definitely not your brother unless you're from a family tree that doesn't fork so much as go straight up like a telephone pole. Now, I'm not a detective. I didn't go to some fancy school where they teach you how to analyze evidence and solve crimes. My investigative experience was limited to finding out which of my roommates in college kept eating my leftover Chinese food without asking. But even I, with my limited detective skills, could recognize that "yours forever" and "in your arms again" were not typical sibling sentiments. These were not the words you use when writing to someone who shares your DNA and childhood memories of fighting over the TV remote. I read the card 3 more times, hoping maybe I'd misread it. Maybe it said, "Yours, brother," and I just skipped a word. Maybe the glitter was affecting my vision and creating some kind of sparkly hallucination. But nope. Every time I read it, it said the same thing. "Yours forever, A." Clear as day. Damning as hell. My hands were shaking now, and not in a cute romantic way, but in a holy crap my entire marriage might be a lie way. I could feel sweat forming on my forehead despite the fact that our apartment was perpetually cold because we kept the heat low to save money. Money that was presumably going to fund Laura's secret romantic life with her brother. The irony wasn't lost on me. For a solid minute, I just stood there like a mannequin, the card in one hand and her jacket in the other, my brain trying to come up with some innocent explanation for what I'd just found. Maybe Adam was short for Amanda, and it was from a female friend who was just very affectionate. Maybe it was an old card from before we got married, from an ex-boyfriend named Andrew or Alex or Alvin or literally any other name that started with A. Maybe I was having a stroke and hallucinating the whole thing. But deep down, in that part of your gut that knows the truth before your brain is willing to admit it, I knew exactly what this card meant. Laura's sick brother wasn't her brother at all. He was her something else. Her boyfriend. Her lover. Her partner. Her whatever you want to call the person you're cheating on your spouse with. The math started adding up in my head with the kind of clarity you only get when everything suddenly makes terrible sense. The vagueness about his condition. The refusal to let me visit or talk to him. The insistence on sending cash instead of traceable transfers. The increasing amounts of money every month. The way she'd panic whenever I suggested meeting him. It wasn't because he was sick or anxious or private. It was because he wasn't sick at all. He was perfectly healthy and probably living a pretty comfortable life thanks to my paychecks. I felt like the world's biggest idiot. Actually, that's not fair to idiots. They'd probably have figured this out faster. I felt like I'd been cast in a movie where everyone else knew the plot twist except me, and they'd all been watching me stumble around like a moron while they munched popcorn and waited for me to catch up. Marcus knew something was off. My mom knew something was off. Hell, probably the mailman knew something was off. But me? I'd been too busy being the supportive husband, too busy trying to be the good guy, too busy patting myself on the back for helping family to see what was right in front of my face. The rage came then, hot and fast like someone had turned on a faucet marked justified anger. I wanted to throw something. I wanted to scream. I wanted to drive to wherever the hell Adam actually lived and have some choice words with both of them. But I didn't do any of those things. Instead, I very carefully, very deliberately put the card back in the envelope exactly how I'd found it, slipped it back into the jacket pocket, and continued sorting laundry like nothing had happened. Why? Because I'm not an idiot. Well, okay, I'm clearly an idiot, but I'm not an impulsive idiot. There's a difference. I needed more information. I needed proof that couldn't be explained away or denied. I needed to know exactly how deep this deception went before I confronted Laura, because if I came at her with just this card, she'd probably spin some story about how it was from his girlfriend, or how I was misunderstanding the situation, or how dare I go through her pockets anyway. She'd turn it around on me somehow. Make me feel like I was the crazy one for being suspicious. That's what people do when they're caught. They gaslight, they deflect, they make you question your own sanity. So I played it cool. I finished the laundry, ate my pizza, watched some mindless TV, and went to bed like everything was normal. When Laura came home around midnight, I pretended to be asleep, which was easy because I'd had plenty of practice pretending things were fine when they absolutely weren't. She kissed my forehead, changed into her pajamas, and climbed into bed beside me, probably thinking she'd gotten away with it once again. But the game had changed. I wasn't the oblivious husband anymore, nodding along to her stories like a broken bobblehead. I was awake now, painfully awake, and I was going to figure out exactly what kind of operation my wife was running. I was going to meet this mysterious Adam character, whether Laura liked it or not. I was going to get answers, even if it meant driving to whatever address she'd been mailing those envelopes to and confronting the truth face to face. Because here's what I realized lying there in the dark next to a woman who I'd thought I knew. You can't unsee evidence. You can't unknow what you've learned. That card with its stupid glitter hearts and its yours forever message was burned into my brain now, and no amount of wishful thinking or denial was going to erase it. My marriage was either built on a lie, or there was some explanation that would make sense of all this, and honestly, I was about 99% sure it was the former. I didn't sleep that night. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, listening to Laura breathe peacefully beside me, and planning my next move. Because if she wanted to play games, fine. But this game was about to have a new player, and I was done being the fool who didn't know the rules. The only thing sick here was the level of my stupidity for not seeing this sooner. But that was about to change. Oh, that was definitely about to change. The week following my discovery of the Glitter Bomb birthday card was probably the most Oscar-worthy acting performance of my entire life. I should have gotten an award for best performance by a husband pretending he doesn't know his wife is running a scam. I'd like to thank the Academy, my complete lack of self-respect, and the burning desire to catch someone red-handed before they can spin another lie. I smiled at Laura over breakfast. I asked about her day at work. I even sent her cute text messages during my lunch break like, thinking about you, when what I really meant was thinking about how you've been playing me like a fiddle for 2 years. Method acting at its finest, folks. But I was also busy. Very busy. Every spare moment I had. I was going through old bank statements on my laptop, tracking down every cash withdrawal Laura had made over the past 24 months. I was checking her jacket pockets every time she left for work, looking for more evidence. I was studying the envelopes she used to send money to Adam, memorizing the return address that she'd written on them. A small town in Indiana called Greenfield. Population approximately 20,000, which according to Google was mostly farmland, a few strip malls, and apparently at least one lying piece of garbage named Adam. I didn't tell Marcus what I'd found. Not yet. I knew if I told him, he'd either try to talk me out of confronting this situation or he'd want to come with me. And this was something I needed to do alone. This was my marriage, my money, my monumental screw-up to fix. Plus, Marcus had a tendency to be a bit too enthusiastic about drama. The last thing I needed was him showing up with popcorn, treating my marriage implosion like it was entertainment. Then came the catalyst, the phone call that pushed me from suspicious and gathering evidence to screw this. I'm driving to Indiana today. It was a Thursday morning, about 9:30. I was at work, pretending to care about a client presentation while actually Googling driving directions to Greenfield, when my phone rang. Unknown number. Normally, I'd let it go to voicemail because unknown numbers are either spam calls about my car's extended warranty or my student loan servicer reminding me that I'll be paying off my debt until I'm approximately 90 years old. But something made me answer. Hello. Hi. Is this Jason Patterson? A woman's voice, professional and cheerful in that way that people who work in human resources always sound. Yeah, that's me. This is Jennifer from Northwestern Memorial Hospital HR department. I'm calling to confirm your wife Laura Patterson's leave request for next week. We just need to verify a few details for our records. My brain screeched to a halt like a car hitting black ice. I'm sorry, did you say next week? Yes, she submitted a request for personal leave starting Monday the 14th. Is there a problem? I did some quick mental math. Today was Thursday the 10th. Laura had left on Tuesday the 8th, telling me she was going to Wisconsin to visit her mother because Adam's condition had gotten worse. She'd been very dramatic about it too, with tears and everything. Full soap opera performance complete with the hand-to-forehead gesture. I don't know how long I'll be gone, she'd said, throwing clothes into a suitcase like she was fleeing a natural disaster. Adam needs me. Mom needs me. I'm sorry to leave you like this. And like the grade A sucker I was, I'd hugged her and told her to take all the time she needed, that family comes first, that I'd be fine eating takeout and living like a bachelor for a few days. I'd even given her $200 in cash for gas and emergencies, which in retrospect was probably the dumbest thing I'd done since marrying her in the first place. No problem, I said to Jennifer, trying to keep my voice steady. Just a miscommunication. Thanks for calling. I hung up and sat there at my desk, staring at my computer screen without seeing it. Let me break this down for anyone who's slow on the uptake. Laura told me she was leaving Tuesday. She told her work she was leaving the following Monday, which meant she'd already been gone for 2 days, but had requested time off starting 5 days from now, which meant she was somewhere right now, telling me she was in Wisconsin dealing with family drama, while her employer thought she was still working her regular shifts. That's when something inside me snapped. Not like a dramatic movie snap where I flipped my desk or punched a wall or did something that would get me escorted out by security. More like a quiet snap, the kind where everything suddenly becomes very clear and you realize you're done playing games. I'd been gathering evidence, trying to be smart about this, planning to confront her when I had all my ducks in a row. But screw the ducks. Screw the evidence. Screw waiting for the perfect moment to reveal that I knew she was lying. I was going to Indiana. Today. Right now, I was going to find this Adam character and I was going to get some answers, even if I had to knock on every door in Greenfield to do it. I closed my laptop, grabbed my jacket, and walked straight to my boss's office. Hey Tom, I need to take a few personal days. Family emergency. Tom looked up from his computer with that expression of mild concern that middle managers wear when they're trying to seem empathetic but are really just annoyed about coverage. Everything okay? It will be, I said. And honestly, I believed it. One way or another, this situation was about to resolve itself. Either I'd find out I was completely wrong about everything and owe Laura the world's biggest apology, or I'd find out I was right and could finally stop living in this weird limbo of suspicion and fake smiles. I went home, threw some clothes in a duffel bag, and grabbed the stack of envelopes I'd been saving, the ones Laura had used to send money to Adam. The return address was printed clearly on each one, 2847 Maple Street, Greenfield, Indiana. I punched it into my phone's GPS. 3 hours and 42 minutes. I could be there by mid-afternoon. Before I left, I called Marcus. He answered on the third ring, probably assuming I was calling to complain about work or invite him to grab beers later. Yo, what's up? Marcus, I need you to do something for me. Okay, this sounds ominous. Should I be worried? If I don't call you by 8 o'clock tonight, I need you to come looking for me. I'm going to Indiana. There was a pause. Why the hell are you going to Indiana? Nobody goes to Indiana voluntarily except for people who already live there. I'm going to meet Adam. Another pause, longer this time. Oh shit. You found something. Birthday card. Very romantic. Signed with yours forever and more glitter than a kindergarten art class. Marcus let out a low whistle. Damn, bro. You want me to come with you? Nah, I gotta do this alone. But seriously, if I don't call you by 8, assume she killed me and ate the evidence. That's not funny, man. Who said I was joking? I hung up before he could argue, grabbed my keys, and headed to my car, a 12-year-old Toyota that made concerning noises when you turned left, but was reliable enough to get me to Indiana and hopefully back again. I threw my bag in the passenger seat, plugged my phone into the charger, and pulled up the GPS one more time. The little blue line stretched from Chicago to this random address in Greenfield, looking deceptively simple on the screen. Just a straight shot down I-65, like I was going on a casual road trip instead of potentially confronting the fact that my entire marriage was built on lies. As I merged onto the highway, I realized my hands were gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles had gone white. My heart was hammering in my chest like it was trying to break out through my ribs. Every exit sign I passed felt surreal, like I was watching myself from outside my body. Part of me kept thinking I should turn around, go home, wait for Laura to come back and confront her like an adult. But the bigger part of me, the part that had been suspicious and patient and careful for too long, just wanted answers. Real, concrete, undeniable answers. I stopped once at a gas station about 2 hours in, grabbed a coffee that tasted like burnt rubber, and texted Marcus, still alive. Hour and a half out. He responded immediately with, "Be careful, man, and maybe take pictures or something. Evidence." Good point. I hadn't even thought about that. I was running on pure adrenaline and righteous anger, not exactly the best recipe for clear thinking. As I got closer to Greenfield, the landscape changed from highway sprawl to actual farmland. Cornfields stretched out on either side of the road, interrupted occasionally by houses, barns, and hand-painted signs advertising fresh eggs or hay bales. It was the kind of place where everyone probably knew everyone, where nothing exciting ever happened except maybe the county fair or high school football games. The kind of place where a random dude from Chicago showing up asking questions would definitely get noticed. I followed the GPS through downtown. Greenfield, which consisted of maybe 6 blocks of old brick buildings, a handful of restaurants, and a Dollar General that looked like it had been there since the Reagan administration. Then I turned onto residential streets with names like Oak Lane and Birch Avenue, past houses that ranged from well-maintained to probably should be condemned. Finally, the GPS announced, "You have arrived at your destination." I pulled over across the street and just sat there for a minute, staring at 2847 Maple Street. It was a small ranch-style house painted light blue with white trim, neat flower beds out front, and a porch with one of those wooden swing benches that screamed suburban domesticity. There was a silver Honda Accord in the driveway, and one of those decorative flags hanging by the front door with a smiling sunflower on it. Wind chimes hung from the porch, tinkling in the breeze. This was it. This was where my money had been going for 2 years. This completely normal-looking house in this completely normal-looking neighborhood. No medical equipment visible. No wheelchair ramp. No signs of illness or struggle whatsoever. Just a regular house where a regular person, or persons, lived a regular life funded by my paychecks. I took a deep breath, grabbed my phone, and got out of the car. Time to meet the family. Walking up to that house felt like those dreams where you're moving in slow motion while everything around you happens at normal speed. Every step across the street, up the driveway, toward that cheerful blue door with its ridiculous sunflower flag, took approximately 7 years. My heart was doing that thing where it beats so hard you can feel it in your throat, and I was sweating despite the fact that it was maybe 60 degrees outside. Classic fight or flight response, except I was choosing option 3. Walk directly into the situation that's probably going to destroy your entire life. The wind chimes were doing their peaceful little song and dance routine, completely oblivious to the fact that I was about to have either the most vindicating or most embarrassing moment of my existence. I stood on the porch for a solid 30 seconds, hand raised to knock, giving myself one last chance to turn around and drive back to Chicago and pretend I'd never found that stupid glitter card. But no, I'd driven 3 hours and 42 minutes. Well, 3 hours and 37 because I may have been speeding, and I wasn't leaving without answers. I knocked. 3 solid raps that echoed way louder than I'd intended, probably alerting everyone within a 5-mile radius that someone was at the door. For a moment, nothing happened, and I had this wild hope that maybe nobody was home, and I'd have to come back later after I'd had more time to prepare what I was going to say. But then I heard footsteps, and the door swung open. Standing there was a young woman, early 20s tops, with dark brown hair pulled back in a messy ponytail and wearing pajama pants covered in cartoon ducks. Actual ducks, yellow ones with little orange beaks. She had one of those fresh-faced looks that made her seem like she'd just woken up from a nap, and she was holding a can of LaCroix like it was a normal Thursday afternoon and random strangers showed up on her doorstep all the time. "Hi," she said brightly, giving me a smile that was disturbingly friendly. "Can I help you?" I opened my mouth, but for a second nothing came out because my brain was too busy trying to figure out who this person was and why she was answering the door at Adam's house. Yeah, hi? I'm looking for Adam." Her expression didn't change, still smiling like I'd just asked her for directions to the nearest Starbucks. "Oh, my dad. He's here. Is he expecting you?" "You're what now?" The world tilted. Actually tilted. Like someone had picked up the entire planet and given it a good shake just to mess with me specifically. "My dad." She said my dad, which meant this perky college-aged person in duck pajamas was Adam's daughter, which meant Adam had a daughter, which meant, well, I wasn't sure what it meant yet, but it definitely wasn't adding up to sick reclusive brother who can barely take care of himself. Before I could formulate a response that didn't make me sound like I was having a stroke, I heard it. A laugh. A very specific, very familiar laugh that I'd heard approximately 10,000 times over the past 3 years. That little musical giggle that Laura did when she found something genuinely funny, the one that had made me fall for her in the first place back at Kevin's stupid housewarming party. I looked past Duck Pajama's girl into the house, and there she was. Laura, my wife, standing in the living room holding a glass of wine like she was at a casual dinner party, wearing jeans and a sweater I'd watched her put on hundreds of times. She was mid-laugh, her head tilted back, looking relaxed and happy in a way I hadn't seen in months. And then she saw me. Our eyes met. Her face went from joy to confusion to absolute terror in about half a second, cycling through emotions like a slot machine landing on "oh shit." "Jason," she gasped, and the wine glass nearly slipped from her hand. She caught it at the last second, but some of the wine sloshed over the rim onto her fingers. "What are you? Why are you? How did you?" "Oh, don't look so surprised," I said, and I was honestly impressed by how calm my voice sounded considering my internal state could best be described as screaming into the void. "I came to meet your brother. You know, the one you're always so worried about? The one who needs all that money every month. I figured it was time we finally met face to face." Duck Pajama's girl looked between us with growing confusion, her smile faltering. "Wait, Mom, what's going on? Who is this?" And there it was. The word that made everything click into place like the world's worst puzzle. Mom. This girl had just called Laura Mom. Not Laura, or my dad's girlfriend, or any other reasonable explanation. Mom. Which meant Laura wasn't just sending money to some random sick dude. She was sending money to her own family. A family that included a daughter who was probably older than our entire relationship. I felt like I was watching this scene from somewhere above my own body, like I was a character in a movie and someone had just revealed the twist ending. Laura started walking toward the door, her face pale, her hand outstretched like she was approaching a wild animal that might bolt. "Jason, I can explain. It's not what you think." "Really?" I said, my voice getting louder despite my best efforts to stay cool. "Because unless this is some elaborate charity for liars, I'm pretty sure it's exactly what I think." So please, enlighten me. Explain how you've been sending thousands of my dollars to your sick brother who turns out to have a daughter who just called you mom. Before Laura could respond, another voice came from inside the house. Babe, who's at the door? And then he appeared. Adam, the man himself, the mysterious invalid, the guy I'd been financially supporting for 2 years without ever meeting. He walked into view wearing gym shorts and a tank top, looking about as sick as an Olympic athlete. He was tall, maybe 6'2", with the kind of build that comes from actually using a gym membership instead of just paying for one and feeling guilty about it. His hair was dark, slightly graying at the temples, and he was holding a protein shaker bottle like he'd just finished a workout. I looked at him, really looked at him. This was the guy who supposedly couldn't work because of his mysterious medical condition. This was the person who needed special diets and therapy sessions and medical equipment. This absolute specimen of health standing in front of me looking like he could run a marathon and then bench press a car. You don't look sick, I said flatly. He had the audacity, the absolute balls, to shrug. Just shrugged. Like I'd commented on the weather or asked him if he preferred Coke or Pepsi. Never said I was. The room went silent except for the sound of those stupid wind chimes outside still doing their peaceful little dance. Laura was frozen between us, looking like she wanted the floor to open up and swallow her whole. Duck Pajamas Girl had backed up into the hallway, clearly sensing that this was about to become the kind of family drama that gets discussed in therapy for years. And Adam, this guy who'd been bleeding me dry while living his best life, just stood there like this was a mildly inconvenient situation instead of the complete implosion of someone's entire reality. Jason, please, Laura started, her voice shaking, tears forming in her eyes. I didn't mean to hurt you. This isn't. It's complicated. Really, I said, and I could feel the anger finally breaking through my shock. Because it seems pretty simple to me. You've been married to me for 3 years, sending my money to your other family, and lying about every single detail. Which part of that is complicated? The part where you committed fraud? Or the part where you've been playing house with this guy while I ate ramen for dinner so we could afford to send him cash? It's not like that, she said, but even she didn't sound convinced. Then what is it like, Laura? Explain it to me. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like I've been funding your secret life with your actual husband. I turned to Adam. I'm assuming you two are married? Or is that also complicated? Adam had the decency to look uncomfortable now, shifting his weight from foot to foot. Look, man, this is between you and Laura. Don't take it out on me. I laughed. Actually laughed. A deep, slightly unhinged sound that probably made me seem like I was losing my mind, which honestly wasn't far from the truth. Oh, believe me, I'm saving plenty for both of you. You think you're not involved? You've been cashing checks, or sorry, envelopes full of cash, with my name on them for 2 years. You've been living off my work, my money, while pretending to be her poor sick brother who couldn't possibly take care of himself. So yeah, buddy, you're absolutely involved. Duck Pajamas Girl spoke up from the hallway, her voice small. Mom, what is he talking about? What checks? What money? Laura whirled around to face her daughter, her composure completely cracking now. Emily, sweetie, go to your room. This is adult business. I'm 22, Mom. I'm not going to my room. Fair point, Emily. Stand your ground. Adam stepped forward, and for a second I thought he was going to try to physically remove me from his house, which would have been the icing on this disaster cake. But he just held up his hands in what I guess was supposed to be a calming gesture. Hey, man, I get that you're upset. Upset? I interrupted. Upset is what you feel when your coffee order is wrong or when someone spoils a TV show. This goes way beyond upset. This is, I gestured wildly around the room, at the comfortable furniture and the flat-screen TV and the pictures on the wall that I was just now noticing showed Laura and Adam and Emily looking like a happy little family unit. This is fraud. This is bigamy. This is whatever the legal term is for ruining someone's entire life while making them think they're being a good person. Laura was full-on crying now, mascara running down her face, looking like the victim in this scenario when she was actually the architect of this entire nightmare. I didn't know how to tell you. By the time we got serious, it was too late. Adam and I have history. We were high school sweethearts. We got married young. But it fell apart, and then I met you, and you were so different and so good, and I thought I could just what? I demanded. Just keep lying forever? Just keep taking my money and sending it here while I worked overtime and skipped meals? Just keep pretending you were visiting your sick brother when really you were. What, exactly? Playing wife with him? Celebrating birthdays with glitter cards that said, yours forever? Adam's eyes widened slightly. You found the card. Yeah, genius, I found the card. Kind of hard to miss when it looks like a craft store exploded. Emily was staring at her parents now with an expression that suggested she was having her own personal revelation. Wait, so you and Dad are still married? But you told me you were divorced. You said, Mom, have you been lying to all of us? And there it was. The beautiful moment when everyone realizes that the person at the center of this web of lies has been playing everyone, not just me. Laura wasn't just a cheating wife. She was a professional con artist who'd somehow convinced multiple people that her various conflicting stories were all true. The silence that followed Emily's question was the kind of heavy, suffocating quiet you only get when everyone in the room simultaneously realizes they've been played. It was like someone had hit the pause button on reality, and we were all just standing there frozen in this bizarre tableau. Me in the doorway looking like a crazy person who'd driven across state lines on a hunch. Laura in the middle of the room with mascara-streaked tears and wine-stained fingers. Adam holding his protein shake like it was a security blanket. And Emily in her duck pajamas looking like her entire worldview had just shattered into a million tiny pieces. Laura opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again like a fish gasping for air. No words came out. What could she possibly say at this point? Sorry, everyone. I've been running a multi-state emotional Ponzi scheme for the better part of a decade. There's no Hallmark card for that situation, no matter how much glitter you use. Mom, Emily pressed, her voice getting harder, angrier. Answer me. Have you been lying to us too? Laura started, but I cut her off because honestly, I'd heard enough of her explanations to last me several lifetimes. Let me help you out here, Laura, I said, my voice dripping with so much sarcasm it could have filled a swimming pool. Yes, Emily, your mother has been lying to everyone. She's been lying to me for 3 years, telling me she was sending money to her sick brother while actually funding her real family's lifestyle. She's apparently been lying to you about being divorced from your dad. And I'm going to go out on a limb here and guess she's been lying to Adam too, telling him God knows what story about where all that cash was coming from. I turned to Adam, who suddenly looked a lot less comfortable. Let me guess, she told you she had a good job? That she was just helping out with bills because she cared? That the money was hers to give? Adam's jaw tightened, and boom, direct hit. I could see it in his eyes. He hadn't known. Or at least, he hadn't known the full story. Sure, he'd been happily cashing those envelopes full of money, but Laura had probably spun him some tale about where it came from. Maybe she said she had a trust fund. Maybe she claimed she was working extra shifts. Whatever the story was, I was willing to bet it didn't include, oh, by the way, I have another husband in Chicago who thinks you're my sick brother. Laura, Adam said slowly, his voice dangerously quiet. Where exactly has this money been coming from? She let out this sound, somewhere between a sob and a laugh, the kind of noise people make when they know they're completely screwed and there's no way out. I was going to tell you. All of you. I didn't know how. Everything got so complicated so fast, and then time kept passing and it seemed easier to just keep lying. I supplied helpfully. Yeah, you mentioned that. You know what's easier than keeping an elaborate web of lies going for years? Not lying in the first place. Just a pro tip for next time. Though I'm guessing your next relationship might be a bit harder to start from prison. Prison? Laura's eyes went wide, like this possibility had somehow never occurred to her. Jason, you wouldn't. I mean, we can work this out, right? We can sit down and talk about this like adults. Like adults. I felt my voice rising despite my best efforts to stay calm. You want to talk like adults? Okay, let's do that. Let's talk about how you married me without ever divorcing your first husband. That's called bigamy, Laura. It's actually illegal. Let's talk about how you've been committing fraud by taking money under false pretenses. Let's talk about how you've been filing taxes. Oh man, we filed joint taxes, didn't we? So that's tax fraud too. Should we discuss all of this like adults? Because I'm thinking maybe we should discuss it with lawyers present. Possibly police officers. Adam finally set down his protein shake, and I could see him doing the mental math, probably calculating just how much trouble he was potentially in as an accessory to all this. Look, I didn't know about any husband. She told me. He glanced at Laura, betrayal creeping into his expression. She told me she was working as a nurse, making good money, and wanted to help out with Emily's college expenses. She said we were divorced. She said she was single. Oh, this just keeps getting better, I said, because apparently my brain had decided that sarcasm was the only way to process this absolute dumpster fire of a situation. So she told you she was single, told me you were her sick brother, and meanwhile she's been playing house with both of us like she's starring in some twisted reality show called Keeping Up with the Sociopaths. Emily had sunk down onto the stairs, her head in her hands. I can't believe this. I can't, Mom. How could you? Dad and I have been struggling. I've been working 2 jobs to pay for community college because you said money was tight. You said we couldn't afford a university. And the whole time you've been, what? Living some double life in Chicago. That hit me in a new way. While I'd been eating ramen and skipping lunch to save money so Laura could send cash to her brother, their daughter had been working herself to death because they supposedly couldn't afford her education. The money I'd been sending, my money, earned from my overtime hours and my freelance gigs, hadn't even been going to help Emily. It had been going to what? Their mortgage? Adam's gym membership? Laura's wine fund? Where did the money go? I asked, my voice suddenly very quiet. Quiet in that dangerous way where you know someone's about to lose it completely. All that money I sent. Thousands of dollars over 2 years. If Emily's working 2 jobs, and you're still struggling, where the hell did it all go? Laura and Adam exchanged a look. Just a quick glance, but it was enough. There was something else. Of course there was something else. Because why have one layer of lies when you can have a whole lasagna of deception? Tell him, Emily said from the stairs, her voice hollow. You might as well tell him everything at this point. It's not like it can get worse. We had some debts, Adam said carefully, which in my experience is what people say when they mean we made catastrophically stupid financial decisions. What kind of debts? I pressed. Credit cards, mostly. And there was this business opportunity. I actually laughed out loud. A business opportunity? You've got to be kidding me. I've been eating off the dollar menu so you could invest in a business opportunity? What was it, essential oils? Crypto? Some timeshare in Florida. It was a food truck, Laura said quietly. Adam wanted to start a food truck business. We thought we needed startup capital, and the banks wouldn't give us a loan because of our credit, and so you decided to use me as your personal ATM. I finished. Cool. That's totally normal, and not at all completely insane. How'd the food truck work out, by the way? Are you slinging gourmet tacos somewhere? Or did my rent money just disappear into thin air? Adam had the decency to look ashamed. It didn't work out. We couldn't get the permits, and then the truck had mechanical problems, and you just kept taking my money anyway, I said. Even after your brilliant business venture failed, you kept letting Laura send you cash every month. Did you ever, even once, think about the person on the other end? The guy who was working his ass off thinking he was helping someone in need. I thought you were rich, Adam said, and immediately regretted it based on the look on his face. You thought I was rich? Do I look rich to you? I drive a Toyota that makes weird noises when you turn left. I buy the generic brand of cereal. Rich people don't marry quickly and send cash through the mail. Rich people have accountants and prenups and financial advisors. Emily stood up abruptly. I can't listen to this anymore. You people are insane. All of you. She looked at her parents with disgust. I'm 22 years old, and I apparently have more sense than both of you combined. Mom, you've been lying to everyone for years. Dad, you've been taking money from some random guy without asking questions. And you, she turned to me. You married someone after 6 months and never thought to ask for proof that her sick brother actually existed? She wasn't wrong. I wanted to argue, but she wasn't wrong. We were all idiots here, just different flavors of stupid. You know what the worst part is? Emily continued, on a roll now. I defended you, Mom. When Dad said you were acting weird, taking trips to Chicago all the time, I told him he was being paranoid. I said you deserved your own life, that you were probably just visiting friends or taking time for yourself. I felt bad for you because you seemed so stressed all the time. And now I find out you've been stressed because you've been juggling 2 separate lives like some kind of criminal. Laura reached out toward her daughter. Emmy, please. Don't call me that. Emily snapped. Don't use your cute nickname for me like that's going to make this okay. Nothing about this is okay. You've ruined, her voice cracked. You've ruined everything. She turned and ran up the stairs, and a few seconds later we heard a door slam hard enough to rattle the pictures on the walls. The three of us stood there in the wake of Emily's exit, the weight of what we'd all done, or in my case, what had been done to me, settling over the room like fog. Those stupid wind chimes were still going outside, still playing their peaceful little song like the world hadn't just imploded. "I think you should leave," Adam said finally, but there was no heat in it. He just sounded tired, defeated. "Oh, I'm leaving," I said. "But this conversation is far from over. Laura, I want you to know that I'm filing for an annulment, or a divorce, or whatever the legal term is for. This marriage was fraudulent from day one. I'm also going to be talking to a lawyer about getting my money back. All of it. Every single penny." "Jason," Laura started, but I held up my hand. "No. No more explanations, no more excuses, no more tears. You don't get to talk anymore. You lost that privilege when you decided to turn my life into your personal ATM machine. I'm done. We're done. Whatever we had, or whatever I thought we had, it's over." I turned to walk out, but paused at the door. "Oh, and Adam, good luck with everything. Something tells me you're going to need it." I walked back to my car on legs that felt like jelly, got in, closed the door, and just sat there for a minute, staring at that cheerful blue house with its sunflower flag and its wind chimes and its family of liars inside. Then I pulled out my phone and called Marcus. "You alive?" he answered. "Yeah," I said, "but my marriage isn't." The drive back to Chicago was a blur of highway lines, gas station coffee, and the kind of rage that starts white hot and then settles into something colder, sharper, and infinitely more dangerous. Marcus stayed on the phone with me for the first hour, mostly just listening to me rant about glitter cards and food trucks and the absolute audacity of people who think they can just lie their way through life without consequences. By the time I hit the Illinois border, I'd moved past the screaming phase and into something much more satisfying, the plotting phase. "So what are you going to do?" Marcus asked as I passed a semi-truck going approximately 3 miles per hour in the left lane, because apparently truck drivers in Indiana have a death wish. "I'm going to destroy her," I said calmly. Too calmly. The kind of calm that should probably worry people. "Okay, but like, legally destroy her, right? We're not talking murder or arson or anything that's going to land you on a Netflix documentary. Please. I'm not going to give her the satisfaction of turning me into a criminal. No, I'm going to do something much worse. I'm going to be smart about this." I could practically hear Marcus grinning through the phone. "Oh, this is going to be good. Tell me everything." By the time I got home, I had a plan. Not a great plan, not a foolproof plan, but a plan that would at least make me feel like I had some control over this situation instead of being the universe's punching bag. I walked into our apartment, my apartment now, I guess, and looked around with fresh eyes. Every piece of furniture we'd bought together, every picture on the wall, every shared item suddenly felt contaminated. This whole place was built on lies. First order of business, money. I grabbed my laptop, logged into our joint bank account, and transferred every single penny into my personal account that she didn't have access to. All $947 of it, which was pathetic considering we should have had way more if she hadn't been sending half my paychecks to Indiana. Then I called the bank and froze the joint account entirely. Let her try to withdraw cash for her next sick brother payment and see what happens. Next, I canceled her phone. We were on a family plan because it was cheaper, which in retrospect was hilarious considering she was using that phone to coordinate her double life. I logged into the account, found her line, and clicked Suspend Service with the kind of satisfaction usually reserved for popping bubble wrap or peeling off a screen protector in one perfect piece. But the piece de resistance, the thing I'm most proud of, was the package. I went to the craft store, Michael's specifically, shout out to the very confused cashier who watched me buy 17 tubes of glitter in various colors. And then I went home and got to work. I took a cardboard box, filled it about halfway with all that glitter, wrote a note on a card that said, "Here's something shiny for your lies. Hope it was worth it," and mailed it to 2847 Maple Street, Greenfield, Indiana. The beauty of glitter is that it's basically herpes. Once you get it, it never fully goes away. It spreads, it multiplies, it shows up in places you never expected months after you thought you'd cleaned it all up. That glitter was going to be in their carpet, their clothes, their car, probably their food. They'd be finding sparkles in their underwear for the next 5 years, a constant reminder that actions have consequences, and sometimes those consequences are craft supplies. I also called Adam. Yeah, I know, probably not my smartest move, but I was on a roll and feeling petty. He answered on the third ring, sounding wary. Hello. Hey, Adam, I said cheerfully, like we were old buddies catching up. Hope your condition improves. You know, your medical condition? The one you never had? It's called honesty, man. Super rare disease these days. Symptoms include telling the truth, not being a garbage human, and maybe getting an actual job instead of living off other people's money. No known cure, unfortunately. Terminal in most cases. Thoughts and prayers. I hung up before he could respond, feeling infinitely better about life. Marcus came over that night with beer and pizza, because he's the kind of friend who knows when you need carbs and alcohol to process trauma. We sat on my couch, bought with my money, that Laura would never sit on again, and I filled him in on every detail. Bro, he said, shaking his head in disbelief while cheese dripped from his slice onto a paper plate. You lived through a telenovela. Like, this is actual soap opera plot material. You could sell this story. Yeah. I took a long drink of beer. Who'd buy it? The young and the extremely stupid? Days of Our Lives, Marcus suggested. General Hospital's gonna need to get involved because this is medical fraud, I countered. We went back and forth like that for a while, turning my disaster of a marriage into comedy material, because sometimes the only way to process trauma is to laugh at it until it loses its power over you. Marcus told me about his own relationship disasters, nothing quite on my level, but still entertaining, and we bonded over the universal truth that people are complicated and relationships are hard, and sometimes you just marry a con artist by accident. What are you going to do about the legal stuff? Marcus asked eventually, getting serious for a moment. Already have a consultation with a lawyer tomorrow, I said. Annulment, hopefully, since the marriage was fraudulent. She was already married when we got married, so legally I'm pretty sure our marriage isn't even valid. Then I'm going to see about getting my money back, though honestly I'm not holding my breath on that one. You can't get blood from a stone, and you definitely can't get money back from people who already spent it on a failed food truck business. Failed food truck, Marcus repeated, still amazed by that detail. Of all the things to lie about, she picked the dumbest possible investment, right? If you're going to scam someone, at least use the money for something cool. Gambling in Vegas, a boat, literally anything more interesting than a food truck that never even served food. My phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. I opened it and immediately recognized Laura's typing style. Lots of exclamation points. Way too many emojis, like she was trying to cute her way out of consequences. Jason, please can we talk? I know you're mad, but I can explain everything. I never meant to hurt you. You have to believe me. We can work this out if you just give me a chance. Red heart crying face. I showed the message to Marcus, who snorted beer out of his nose. Did she really put a heart emoji on that? The audacity. I typed back. New phone, who dis? Then I blocked the number. Cold-blooded, Marcus said approvingly. I'm proud of you, man. More messages came through over the next few hours, from different numbers. Laura must have been borrowing phones from everyone she knew, desperately trying to get through to me. Each message was some variation of, please talk to me, or this is all a misunderstanding, or my personal favorite. I think we owe it to our love to try to work through this. Our love. The love that was apparently less important than her other family, her failed business ventures, and her elaborate lies. That love. I blocked every number, ordered more pizza, and settled in for the long haul of rebuilding my life. Marcus crashed on my couch that night because he didn't trust me to be alone, which was probably smart. Not because I was going to do anything dangerous, but because processing this level of betrayal is better done with a friend nearby, who can remind you that not everyone in the world is a lying sociopath. Around midnight, lying in bed staring at the ceiling, I had a moment of clarity. This whole situation was objectively terrible. My marriage was fake, I'd lost thousands of dollars, and I'd spent 2 years of my life being played for a fool. But you know what? I was free now. Free from the constant wondering why we never had money. Free from the vague answers and deflections. Free from sending cash to a sick brother who apparently spent it on protein shakes and gym memberships. I grabbed my phone and sent Marcus a text, even though he was literally 20 feet away on my couch. Thanks for having my back through this insanity. His response came immediately. That's what friends are for. Also, I'm totally using this story to pick up women. My friend survived marriage fraud is a great conversation starter. You're an idiot. Yeah, but I'm an idiot who's never been accidentally married to two people at once, so I'm doing pretty good comparatively. Fair point. The next morning, I woke up feeling something I hadn't felt in weeks. Lightness. Like someone had removed a weight from my chest that I hadn't even realized was there. Sure, I still had to deal with lawyers and annulments, and probably a lot of awkward conversations with people who'd known us as a couple. But the worst was over. The truth was out. I knew what I was dealing with now, and knowledge is power, even when that knowledge is your wife has been running a scam on you for years. I made coffee, actually good coffee from the expensive beans I'd stopped buying because we needed to save money, and sat down at my computer. Time to start documenting everything. Bank statements, text messages, dates, amounts, everything I'd need to prove fraud if it came to that. I was nothing if not thorough. My phone rang. A number I didn't recognize, but this time I answered because I was feeling bold. Jason. A woman's voice, young, familiar. Emily. How'd you get my number? Mom's phone. Look, I know you probably don't want to talk to anyone from this disaster of a family, but I wanted to say I'm sorry. For what it's worth, I had no idea about any of it. I believed her. I know. You were collateral damage in your mom's game. We both were. Yeah, well, thanks for showing up yesterday. I needed to know the truth, even if it sucked to hear. Dad and we're figuring things out. Mom left. Went to stay with her sister in Wisconsin, apparently. The real Wisconsin, not the fake one she was always claiming to visit. Good, I said, and meant it. You and your dad deserve better than what she was doing. So do you, Emily said quietly. For what it's worth, she talked about you sometimes. Said you were a good guy. Guess she didn't appreciate what she had. We talked for a few more minutes. Two people connected by someone else's lies, trying to make sense of senseless situation. Before we hung up, Emily said, Hey, if you ever want to grab coffee or something, let me know. Not in a weird way, just, I feel like we're both victims of the same crime. Might be nice to compare notes. Maybe, I said, once I'm done being furious at everyone associated with this situation. She laughed. Fair enough. Good luck with everything, Jason. You too, kid. The thing about having your life completely implode is that afterwards, you're left with a lot of free time. Time you used to spend wondering where all your money went, or making dinner for a wife who was probably thinking about her other family, or generally being a trusting idiot. Suddenly, that time is yours again, and you have to figure out what to do with it. Some people might spiral into depression or dive headfirst into a bottle of Jack Daniels. Me? I turned my guest room into a studio and started a podcast. I know what you're thinking. Jason, literally everyone and their grandmother has a podcast these days. What makes yours special? And you'd be right to be skeptical. But here's the thing. My podcast wasn't about true crime or pop culture or interviewing celebrities. It was about people who'd been scammed by the people they loved. I called it Not Her Brother, because I'm nothing if not on brand with my trauma. The first episode was just me, sitting in front of a microphone I'd bought with money from that joint account before I transferred it all out, telling my story. The whole story. Every embarrassing detail, every red flag I'd missed, every moment where I should have known better but didn't. I didn't hold back. I talked about the glitter card, the food truck, the daughter in duck pajamas, all of it. I figured if I was going to be the poster child for how to get played by your spouse, I might as well own it completely. I edited it that night, uploaded it to Spotify and Apple Podcasts without really expecting anything, and went to bed. When I woke up the next morning, the episode had been downloaded 4,000 times. 4,000. By noon, it was at 20,000, and my email inbox was full of messages from people sharing their own stories of relationship fraud, betrayal, and spectacular stupidity in the name of love. Dude, your podcast is blowing up. Marcus texted me around 2 in the afternoon. My girlfriend just sent it to me saying I need to listen. I was like, yeah, I know. I was there when he lived through it. The comments and messages ranged from supportive to hilarious to absolutely heartbreaking. One woman wrote about how her boyfriend of 5 years had been sending money to his sick mother, who turned out to be his other girlfriend. Another guy talked about his wife, who'd been running a secret online business selling his grandmother's jewelry that she'd stolen from their house. Someone else discovered their partner had a whole second family 3 states over, complete with a mortgage and a golden retriever. I started replying to messages, asking if people wanted to share their stories on the podcast. Within a week, I had enough material for about 50 episodes. Turns out, the world is full of people who've been conned by someone they loved, and they're all desperate to talk about it, to feel less alone, to laugh about the absurdity of it all instead of crying. Episode 2 featured a guy named Derek from Portland whose fiancée had convinced him she was in witness protection and needed money to pay for her security detail. He'd given her $40,000 over 3 years before he realized the FBI doesn't actually ask for cash payments via Western Union. We spent an hour talking about the warning signs, the excuses, the way love makes you willing to believe absolutely bonkers explanations for suspicious behavior. The worst part, Derek said, his voice crackling through my headphones, is that part of me still wants to believe her. Like, even knowing she was lying, even after she admitted it, my brain keeps trying to find ways she might have been telling the truth. That's what love does to you, man. It makes you stupid. Preach, I said, because he was absolutely right. I drove 3 hours to confront my wife's sick brother, and I was still hoping I'd somehow gotten it wrong. Like maybe there was a reasonable explanation for why she had a secret family. The podcast became my therapy. Every episode was me processing another layer of what had happened, understanding it better, finding the humor in the horror. And the feedback was incredible. People told me the podcast made them feel less alone, less stupid, less ashamed of having been fooled. Some said it helped them leave their own bad relationships. Others just liked hearing that they weren't the only ones who'd made catastrophically poor judgment calls in the name of love. My favorite episode, number 7, was when I brought Marcus on as a guest. We called it The Friend Who Tried to Warn You, and just let him rant for 45 minutes about all the times he'd tried to tell me something was off with Laura, and I'd ignored him. Bro, I literally said she was funding a cult or hiding a gold mine, Marcus said, laughing. And you were like, nah man, she's a nurse. Nurses are good people. Like someone's job automatically makes them trustworthy. In my defense, I argued, most nurses aren't running elaborate multi-state fraud schemes. I feel like that's a reasonable assumption. Most nurses also don't send their entire paycheck to a mysterious brother who won't video chat because screens hurt his eyes. That's some Dracula-level excuse. The banter was good, the laughs were real, and people loved it. That episode got 50,000 downloads in the first week. Apparently, everyone has a friend who tried to warn them about something and they didn't listen, so it was universally relatable content. Around episode 10, something shifted. I stopped being angry all the time. Don't get me wrong. I was still furious about what Laura had done, still dealing with lawyers and paperwork and the endless bureaucratic nightmare of proving that your marriage was fraudulent. But the constant rage that had been sitting in my chest like a burning coal started to cool down. I could think about the whole situation without wanting to punch a wall or send more glitter bombs to Indiana. I started going out again. Not dating. God no, I wasn't ready for that psychological minefield. But just existing in the world as a single person. I went to bars with Marcus and his friends, started playing basketball at the gym on Thursdays, took a cooking class because I was tired of surviving on takeout and frozen dinners. The cooking class was full of recently divorced people and lonely single folks in their 30s, all of us learning to make risotto and pretending we weren't there because our personal lives were disasters. I met a woman named Sarah who was in the class because her husband had left her for their Pilates instructor. Classic, she said, stirring her risotto with more aggression than was probably necessary. So classic it's basically a cliché. At least your wife was original about it. A fake sick brother? That's creative fraud. Thanks, I said. I'll put that on her recommendation letter. Laura Patterson, innovative in the field of deception, really thinks outside the box when it comes to ruining lives. Sarah laughed, and it felt good to make someone laugh about this stuff. It felt like I was taking back power, transforming my pain into something useful, something that could connect people instead of isolating them. The podcast kept growing. By episode 15, I had sponsors, actual companies wanting to advertise on my show about relationship fraud. A therapy app, a legal services company specializing in divorce, and weirdly, a meal kit delivery service, though I'm not sure what the marketing connection was there. Maybe they figured people going through breakups needed easy dinner solutions. I used the sponsorship money to upgrade my equipment, bring on more guests, and actually pay for the therapy I'd been avoiding because I kept telling myself I was fine. Spoiler alert, I was not fine. I was functioning, which is different. My therapist, Dr. Chun, was a woman in her 50s who'd heard everything and was impressed by nothing, which made her perfect for my situation. "So you started a podcast instead of processing your emotions," she said during our first session, looking at me over her glasses with an expression that said she'd heard this exact coping mechanism approximately 7,000 times before. "I am processing my emotions," I protested. "Publicly. With strangers. Who send me emails about their own trauma. That's avoidance with an audience, Jason." She wasn't wrong, but she also wasn't entirely right. The podcast was helping. Not just me, but other people too. I was building something positive out of something terrible, which felt like the definition of healthy coping. Dr. Chun eventually agreed, though she made me promise to actually talk about my feelings instead of just making jokes about them constantly. Through the podcast, I met others who'd been conned in similar ways. There was Jennifer from Miami whose boyfriend had been sending money to his dying mother for 6 years. The mother was alive and well, running a bed and breakfast in Vermont with no idea her son was using her as a sob story. There was Marcus, different Marcus, not my friend, whose wife had convinced him she had cancer and needed money for experimental treatments that turned out to be a timeshare in Cabo. We formed this weird little community, this club nobody wanted to join, but everyone was glad existed once they found it. We did meetups in various cities, these bizarre support groups where we'd sit around sharing our stories and laughing at the absurdity of it all. The Chicago meetup had 30 people. 30 people just in my city who'd been significantly defrauded by romantic partners. That's when I realized this wasn't just my problem or my story. This was an epidemic of lies that nobody talked about because everyone felt too stupid to admit they'd been fooled. "Why don't we talk about this more?" I asked the group at one meetup, held in a bar that had graciously let us take over their back room. "Why is this so common, but nobody discusses it until after it happens to them?" "Because nobody wants to be the idiot who didn't see it coming," said a woman named Angela who discovered her fiancé had 3 other fiancés in different cities. "We all think we're too smart to fall for this stuff. Until we do." That became another episode. Why smart people fall for dumb lies. It was one of my most popular, probably because it gave people permission to forgive themselves for being human, for trusting someone they loved, for not being psychic enough to detect deception from people who'd gotten very good at lying. 6 months after the Indiana confrontation, I was in a completely different place mentally. I'd gone from broken and betrayed to functioning and philosophical to actually kind of thriving in a weird way. My podcast had over 200,000 regular listeners. I'd been interviewed by a few online magazines about relationship fraud and financial abuse. I'd even been contacted by a producer who wanted to option my story for a limited series, though I told them they'd have to fight Emily for the rights since she'd joked about writing a memoir called "My Mom Had 2 Families, and All I Got Was This Lousy Trauma." The legal stuff with Laura was still ongoing. Turns out annulling a fraudulent marriage is complicated. Who knew? But I'd stopped checking my email obsessively for updates. It would happen when it happened. In the meantime, I had a life to rebuild, a podcast to run, and apparently a burgeoning career as the poster child for survived being married to a con artist. Life moved on, and honestly, I was doing pretty damn good. The podcast was thriving, I'd gotten a promotion at work, and I'd even started traveling a bit. Nothing fancy, just weekend trips to places I'd always wanted to visit but couldn't afford when I was funding someone else's food truck fantasies. Then I met Emily. Not Duck Pajamas Emily from Indiana, different Emily. This Emily owned a coffee shop in Wicker Park called Grounds for Divorce, which should have been a red flag, but was actually just her sense of humor about her own failed marriage. We met when I did a podcast recording there, and she made me a latte with a foam heart that she immediately destroyed with a spoon, saying, "That's what I think about romance." I was hooked. We took things slow, glacier slow, because neither of us was interested in rushing into anything ever again. She had her baggage, I had mine, and we were both perfectly content to unpack it at our own pace. One night over Thai food, she asked, "If you ever saw Laura again, what would you say?" I thought about it, twirling pad thai around my fork. Probably just ask if her brother finally got better. Emily laughed, really laughed, the kind that made her snort wine through her nose and apologize while still giggling. "It's been 10 years since the brother incident," as I now call it in therapy. I'm happier, wiser, and significantly more suspicious of vague family stories, which Dr. Chun says is healthy skepticism and not paranoia. Emily and I got married, slowly, carefully, with a prenup that made our lawyers rich. We have twin boys who think Daddy's podcast stories about the glitter incident are hilarious. I still keep that birthday card in my desk drawer, not as a wound, but as a trophy. Proof that I survived the world's dumbest lie and came out stronger. The podcast ended at episode 200, but I still get emails from listeners thanking me for helping them trust their guts. Marcus is godfather to my kids. Even Duck Pajamas Emily and I grab coffee occasionally. Trauma bonding is real, folks. I heard through mutual friends that Laura and Adam eventually broke up. Apparently Karma has excellent timing. She caught him cheating with his cousin. The family reunion must have been awkward. If I could tell my younger self anything? Buddy, when your gut says something's off, it's not gas. It's the truth knocking. And next time someone mentions their sick brother, maybe just ask for a doctor's note.